From battlefield to bomb shelter, from home front to hospital, from volunteer rosters to victims lists, women experience war in distinctive, gendered ways. These are their stories. These are their voices. Welcome to Voices of Women at Wartime, a podcast by the Center for Women's Justice. I'm Rachel Stomel.
And I'm Rivkah Lubitch.
Voices of Women at Wartime examines how women affect war and how war affects women. These are the unique perspectives and testimonies of women in their own words, a candid conversation that is sometimes hopeful, sometimes heartbreaking, but always honest and always essential. As we launch into the series, a bit of background about who we are and why we're doing this. The Center for Women's Justice is a legal advocacy organization in Israel that defends women's rights whenever they're violated by the state in the name of religion.
We use the power of the courts, the media, and grassroots mobilization to address a range of injustices to women. The problem of agunot, or chained women who can't get divorced under Israeli and religious law. The problem of mamzerim, or quote-unquote illegitimate children who are tracked on a state blacklist and stripped of civil rights. The issue of invasive Jewishness investigations and even Jewishness revocations conducted by the state, especially on women converts and immigrants, gender discrimination, and more.
And who are we? Rivkah is a feminist activist writing injustice through her work as a To'enet Rabbanit, literally a rabbinic pleader, which is a religious advocate representing women in the rabbinic courts. She's a prolific writer who has authored collections of modern feminist midrashim, 2 books, and innumerable articles. She co-hosts CWJ's Hebrew podcast, Mevakrot B'Rabbanut, and leads CWJ's think tank dedicated to systematically resolving mamzer issues.
Rachel is CWJ's English Communications Director and believes in the power of mobilizing communities for social change. She does this by running CWJ's English social media, managing campaigns, counseling couples about halachic prenups and postnups, producing graphics and translations, and changing hearts and minds through her speaking and writing.
And as our name makes clear, everything we do at the Center for Women's Justice aims to bring justice to women.
So how does this all tie into a podcast about women's voices in a time of war?
So now here I'd like to talk about another form of justice, and that is epistemic justice. Epistemic justice means the way we give validity and value to people's narratives. Who do we regard as credible? Whose stories do we listen to? Whose expertise do we recognize? Whose points of view do we include in our cultural conversation? Women have long suffered from epistemic injustice, meaning women's voices and stories have been dismissed as not important, not valid, or not credible. This has been the case in all sorts of areas, wartime certainly being one of them. And that's why we at the Center for Women's Justice feel that it is essential right now to dedicate this podcast series to highlighting and centering women's voices. It's an intentional feminist act, it's an important wartime act, and it's part and parcel of our vision for women's justice in Israel.
In this series, we'll be speaking with women from all walks of life in Israel. Women, Jewish and non-Jewish, soldiers and civilians, mothers, kids, scholars, social workers, survivors, activists and advocates, students, religious leaders, and volunteers. We'll hear perspectives that enlighten us and challenge us, that make us proud and maybe even make us uncomfortable. Because wartime is complex and so are the women who experience it.
I also want to underscore an important point about you and your role. By listening to this podcast, you are a witness. Giving these voices your attention means giving them power.
If you, like us, agree that women's stories are essential to the Israeli narrative, subscribe to the Voices of Women at Wartime wherever you get your podcasts and encourage your friends to listen and subscribe too. Thank you for joining us on this journey.